Hello and welcome to episode 34 of the Gangrene Against the World podcast. I'm Allan Simon. The New York Jets are 2-9. They have secured their 10th straight losing season as they fall to the Baltimore Ravens, 23-10 in Baltimore. It has been a similar type of performance from this team the last few weeks. They certainly have not given up. They are playing for Aaron Glenn, but the product on the field is really poor, and it comes from a bunch of different places. Let's start with the props. And this is a very low bar, but this team is still playing hard for Aaron Glenn. And really, since the Cowboys game, they have not had the doors blown off them. And we've seen, Robert Saleh or Adam Gase or you name the head coach, the amount of no-shows that these teams have had once the team really starts to tank. And I got to give Glenn credit that these guys want to win. Breece Hall, who has that awful fumble, is devastated because he wanted to win that game today against the Ravens. But the decision-making by Aaron Glenn is still really bad in game. He's using his timeouts better, which is great, but those are table stakes for a head coach. But another opportunity where he has the best punter in football right now in Austin McNamara, and they have the ball in their own territory. It is 4th and 2. This is not a tush-push situation. This is where you're probably going to throw the ball. And on 4th and 2 at your own 40-whatever yard line, you go for it, and you don't get it again. And it just hands points to the Ravens. And your defense has been playing better. And instead of putting them in a position where they get to defend the full field, they defend a short field. It leads to points. And that was one of the two major blunders of this game. And the second, of course, is Breece Hall's fumble. And listen, Breece was the only spark on this offense all game. And it was an effort play that he made, and the ball just gets ripped out when he's being tied up by another defender. But Breece Hall's had a few of these now where he fumbles in really big situations. He had a great day today, only 44 yards on the ground, couldn't really get it going, but he had 75 yards in the passing game. He broke off a really long play that set them up to make this game competitive, and it was mostly competitive. Tyrod was fine, 17 of 28, 222 yards, a touchdown, the late pick at the end where he's just hurling it downfield. But Aaron Glenn needs to be taking the things he's learned, these mistakes that he's making, and apply them to games this year to show that he's not going to make those decisions next year. And another time going forward on 4th down, it's just a mistake. And the analytics and Seth Walder and all these idiots who think that, well, statistically, because they end up converting this X amount of times, it is worth it. No, you have to know your team. You have to know what your team is qualified to do and capable of doing. Tyrod Taylor on 4th and 2 needing to throw to a bunch of third-string wide receivers is a huge blunder. It is a huge mistake. Also, the relentless use of Isaiah Davis on 3rd down makes no sense. These are plays where Breece Hall should be in the game to have a chance to convert. And if you get into 4th down and it's on your own territory and it's not an inch, then you punt the ball the other way and you give your defense that has struggled a chance to defend a whole field. And I'm watching the Cowboys-Eagles game right now where two former Jets are really part of just some disgusting play at the end of this game. First, Xavier Gipson fumbles the ball, which looks like it's just going to hand the Cowboys the lead. And then Brian Schottenheimer on 4th down within 6 yards decides to go for it instead of kick a go-ahead field goal with less than 3 minutes left or less than 4 minutes left. These coaches have broken their brains over these analytics. You need to understand the situation of the game. The Giants had a situation today that you can debate. Yeah, the field goal makes it a 6-point game, but you do give the ball back where a touchdown seals the game. To me, that's a risk worth taking where you can win the game in that moment. The Jets weren't winning the game by converting that 4th down. Most likely, even if they convert that, they're going to end up punting in that situation because they're not moving the ball very well as an offense. But instead of using your really good young punter, you give your defense a really bad situation. So the Jets continue to make mental errors, and they keep looking like a traditional bad team. And, I've thought a lot about how I've used that term the last 2 weeks. I do want to give Aaron Glenn and this team credit for for the effort they're putting out there. But I also think that because this team at one point was 0-7, the bar is so low that we're almost giving them too much credit that, hey, you only lost by 13 points today. You covered the spread. You were 13.5-point underdogs, and you covered the spread today. That is a very low bar. At some point, this team needs to show that they can find a way to not be a bad team. And they have easy games ahead of them. This is a game that Baltimore absolutely needed, and for most of it, until that stupid fourth down play, you thought this was really going to be a slugfest, because in the first half, Lamar Jackson looks terrible, Derrick Henry looks slow, and although Henry gets his 2 touchdowns, he's averaging 3 yards a carry, and he is running in mud. Lamar does not look fully healthy to me. He had a hard time making decisions in real time, but the Jets are not a good football team. The Ravens have a really good head coach and a superstar quarterback, and they found the way to win. And you got to give them credit because their schedule gets really tough, and they've got to find a way to take this division, and I think they can as the Steelers lose today. And overall, this game was a huge win for the Ravens. But if the Jets go ahead and if they lose to Miami next week and they lose to the Saints and they lose to the Falcons, I think it is fair, depending on who the available head coaches are going to be, to say, is it worth taking a really hard look at Aaron Glenn? Now, if he goes 1-2, 2-1 in those games, and they continue to play like they kind of had, where they're competitive, they're in it, they give the Patriots another fight, then I think you can understand bringing Aaron Glenn back no matter what next year. But at some point, the play needs to be a little bit better. There needs to be more consistent play on defense. Despite the fact that Derrick Henry looks terrible and Lamar looked awful, this team is going to end up being one of the historically bad defenses in terms of impact of all time. They do not have a turnover on the continent of North America this year. Their one fumble was in Europe. Their one fumble was in London against the Broncos. They cannot intercept the ball at all. And because when you look at these defensive backs, and we killed Sauce Gardner for forever about it, look at all these plays in the end zones. Look at all these plays that are deep balls. They're taking shots downfield. No one in the secondary tries to find this ball. And that has to be coaching. You can't tell me that someone isn't saying one time, hey, you know what? When the ball's in the air, go find it. So you don't get a huge pass interference call like we saw today. And you give yourself a chance to make a play on the ball. Tony Adams, it looks like he has a pass breakup, but really that ball's dropped in the end zone. He gets to celebrate like he defended the pass, but he has no idea where the ball is. No one in the secondary has any idea where the ball is. So instead, what you're left with is a team needing to play perfect other than that, because this team is historically bad and making impact plays on defense. I thought Will McDonald looked pretty sharp, although he didn't have the impact we're used to seeing from him. He isn't able to get to Lamar, but it's harder to get to Lamar than it is other quarterbacks. Jawan Briggs did have a nice sack today, and he continues to be a nice player. And, Darren Muji's fingerprints are all over the parts of this team that are effective. Outside of Breece Hall, Briggs has looked really good. Phillips is playing hurt, but he's playing effectively and at least making his presence known on the defensive line. John Mechie has a touchdown again, and he's looked really sharp. And A.D. Mitchell is going to be a hot button topic for this team, I think, for the next couple years. But that guy can get open, and he ran a beautiful route on an in route that led to a first down. He only had 2 catches on 7 targets. He needs to find a way to haul the ball in. Muji's brought in some guys that were really throw-ins and trades, and like Brownlee, right? Brownlee was a draft pick swap, and he makes some big plays today in the red zone. So there are things to celebrate about this team that give you hope about the future. But right now, there's no idea what the quarterback situation is going to be. Tyrod's going to be the start of the rest of the year unless he gets hurt, and I think we're going to see Brady Cook. Justin Fields is not going to be the backup on this team next year, although it might be tantalizing to think about it. I think it'd be a mistake, whoever you bring in, whether it's a veteran or a rookie next year. And the head coach is still a huge question mark. It is a thing to say that, hey, at least they're still playing, and that deserves some credit. But if that's the bar we're setting for the head coach of the New York Jets, then this team's never going to be good. This team is never going to succeed. We're going to go another 10 years without a winning season because if the bar is, well, they're not getting the doors blown off them. They're not getting embarrassed every single weekend. They lost by 2 touchdowns today. You know, the reaction online is like, hey, it was a pretty good effort by the Jets today. They lost by 2 scores. The bar is so incredibly low for the Jets right now. It's embarrassing, really. But I felt the same way when they're being competitive after the first half. Now they give it all away immediately because they make dumb plays, they make a bad decision, and then all of a sudden you're down 2 scores again. And it happens so fast with this team. You know, the Jets, this is 11 straight games without an interception, the longest streak in NFL history to start a season. And a lot of the accolades or achievements, if you can call them that, at the end of the season are going to be real lowlights for a team that has been really bad for 15 years. And it's a shame that this conversation about Aaron Glenn probably won't go away until they win a couple more games. But you know what? Shows something. I thought he looked like a good leader on the sideline today. He goes up to Breece Hall and has his arm around him. He doesn't kill him as he shouldn't. You know, Breece Hall's your best player, and he made a mistake, and it happens. It was an effort mistake. That's the bare minimum for a head coach. So overall, listen, I'm glad that we're watching a team that's not getting blown out every single week. I'm glad that there's some bright spots on this roster, but, you know, I'd rather be the Jets right now than seeing what the Giants are doing every week where they're blowing fourth quarter leads. The Giants tie a record, their 5th loss in a game where they've held a double-digit lead. They are 2-5 when they've had a lead of at least 10 points this season. And that's coaching, and that's a bad defensive coordinator. But you think in the future, because it seems like they've got a quarterback who could be really good, there's hope for this team. They're going to have first pick at a head coach. I think that's a good landing spot. So, you know, long term, it's probably better to be a Giants fan than a Jets fan. But in terms of this season, seeing what the Giants are doing, where they're putting up great performances and then they have a defensive coordinator who doesn't have his all-pro defensive tackle on the field in overtime, you know, but those are all things that are going to be sorted out in the offseason, where for the Jets, this is who we're going to have next year. It is going to be the Aaron Glenn show again, hopefully with a new defensive coordinator. We have no idea who the quarterback is going to be or what combination of quarterbacks we're going to see. And it's frustrating to know that there's not going to be a lot of answers that come from these next few weeks. But the Jets lose again. They guarantee their 10th straight losing season, which is unfathomable when you think about how 2015 ended and the hope for Todd Bowles. And then to think it's been 15 years since they made the playoffs, and that AFC Championship game against the Steelers, that's a long, long time ago. So a lot of crazy games today. We'll get into it a little bit later this week. There probably won't be another Gangrene Against the World until after Thursday, so have a happy Thanksgiving, and look out for another episode of Simon Says Sports, as well as get into some of the trades we've seen now, a big trade in baseball, decisions to be made in MLB, and I'll get into more of the Giants situation as well on Simon Says Sports. But the Jets lose, another losing season. They face Miami on Sunday, and the story keeps rolling along. This has been episode 34 of the Gangrene Against the World podcast. I'm Allan Simon. Thank you for listening.